Move it, ladies! This is not your Aunt Fanny's dance! Jump over him! Come on, Elder, get the lead out! Not bad. Now hit the dirt and crawl forward under the barbed wire. Your accuracy will be defined by the distance of your crosshairs. Fire such more rounds in your heart.
Call of Duty was at one stage a franchise that wanted to make its mark. It wasn't always the top of the food chain in the mainstream FPS market. In the early 2000s, Activision and Infinity Ward would create an alternative to the Medal of Honor series, a mainstay in the World War II FPS category. Before Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare took Call of Duty to greater heights, it had its roots within World War II, showing different perspectives of the Allied forces fighting the Axis powers, from the Americans breaking their way into the Rhine, the Brits enacting covert operations behind enemy lines, and the Soviets fending off the Wehrmacht while killing their own men for deserting. This era of warfare is still talked about and puzzled over to this very day, and in the first Call of Duty entry, you get to see dramatized snippets of some of the most significant battles in the conflict. It would take a long time for the companies to return to the World War II era of shooters, with entries such as World War II 2017 and Vanguard, both receiving mixed reception. But in 2003, Call of Duty 1 would receive critical acclaim across the board, following a sizable community on the PC, which at the time the series was popular on before consoles came and took over. Personally, I had never played this game up until now. The furthest I had gone back was Call of Duty 2, but then I decided I wanted to go back to the beginning of Call of Duty, to play the game that started it all. The single-player campaign is structured across 3 different characters, each representing their own side of the Allied forces. You have the American, the Brit, and the Russian, all fighting the Germans on different fronts. In between levels, you are given a briefing to what your objectives are, either in document form or from the narrative voice during cutscenes. Sometimes you will also get the thoughts of each character during the loading screens, showing their thoughts and feelings about the war and the mission they're undertaking. We don't know much about them other than their names, but I feel like this was done on purpose, to write them in such a way that anyone could be in their shoes, because the soldiers encompass all the others that fight on the same battlefield. They all have loved ones back home, family, friends, and whatever is making them feel homesick. Later entries would develop the main characters and other series more, but when you factor in the classic COD series like 1, 2, and 3, they also apply the same concept of having multiple perspectives with a blank state. As I said, the beginning of Call of Duty began as a World War II shooter, and all the action is centralized in Europe. All of the levels are based on historical battles that took place, and even go as far as using the same names for the operations they were put under. Case in point, Operation Overlord, the Battle of Normandy. Out of the 3, my personal favorite was the Soviets. They have the most detail crammed into the game, have great weapons to use, and also lets you drive a tank. But all 3 campaigns are fantastic with a great variety of set pieces and mission types to enjoy. Call of Duty has an amazing level of detail and authenticity in displaying the war-torn atmosphere of World War II Europe, showing the land to be beautiful but also suffering from the chaos surrounding it. The soldiers themselves are also well acted for a game from 2003, an era where voice acting had a long way to go. But throughout the franchise, the companies had always enlisted well-known actors and actresses to bring their characters to life, and it's no different here. You have the likes of Steve Bloom playing as Captain Foley, Michael Gough as Captain Price, Giovanni Ribisi as Private Elder, and Jason Statham as Sergeant Waters, just to name a few. Everyone here does a great job of behaving like the soldiers from this era, sarcastic, serious, but also tired and paranoid from the threat of artillery or more Jerrys around the corner. From a gameplay point of view, you'll most likely be familiar with it the moment you start it, and that's because most people have started with the later entries like I did with Call of Duty 4. The animations of weapons, the distinct feel of aiming, that distinct grenade sound we've heard too many times, it's all here, albeit in a very dated format, since this is the very first Call of Duty we're talking about. I knew from the start I wasn't going to enjoy it as much as the later entries, but at the same time it wasn't as bad as I expected. In fact, I actually had a lot of fun with the campaign. You have a large variety of levels to enjoy, from running through MG42 fire without a weapon, to infiltrating a large German ship, to steamrolling German tanks with Russian ones, dropping bombs on Krauts. You get the idea. Every other level is the same other than the set piece. You go from point A to point B, setting explosives on items, or shooting enemy positions down to the zero. As for the weapons, you have most of the iconic World War II selections available to you, but certain weapons can't be accessed based on the campaign you're playing. For instance, when you play the Soviets, you can't get the Enfield or the M1 Garand, but German weapons are always accessible since they're the only enemy you fight in the game. As for the Germans themselves, they usually pin you down with the Kar 98K, the MP40 or MP44, sometimes the MG42 or MG34 just to annoy you, or a rear Panzerfaust. They're all pretty manageable depending on how good your aim is. They're fairly accurate and are quick to respond. Occasionally you will have to contend with a tank or a transport vehicle, but usually the game gives you exactly what you need to destroy them. The weapons all handle really well, aiming feels really satisfying, and I was surprised to see how polished it felt even as a debut title. The tank, when you finally get access to it, has a great addition of letting you turn with the cannon and the tank at the same time, either that or just turning and aiming manually. It's simple but really fun to use. Enemy gun placements like the flak cannon or the anti-tank cannon move really slowly, but are incredibly useful for what they're. The enemies themselves aren't particularly smart, but they are most certainly dynamic in their movement and behavior. They will peek, lean, crouch, prone, rush to position, throw a grenade to flush you out, duck behind cover, set up an MG nest to suppress you. For 2003, this was really impressive, and later entries wouldn't give the enemies this much freedom, and that's a shame really. In terms of difficulty, this is definitely one of the harder entries, especially with the expansion pack United Offensive, and one of the main reasons why is because there's no regeneration of health. Instead, you have a health bar that can only be replenished with health packs that you can find. The higher difficulties reduce the availability of these items, so in other words, you can't just go out like Leroy Jenkins and expect regenerating health to save you unless you know what you're doing. Call of Duty 1's health system encourages you to make use of cover and peek when you have a clear shot, so extra caution is advised when going out in the open. 2003 was a pretty dated period for the shooter market, and it wouldn't make any graphical leaps until the year after with games like Half-Life 2 and Doom 3, but Call of Duty was undoubtedly the most polished shooter available in the year of its release. The weapon models reflect their real-life counterparts, as well as the environments of Germany and Russia, the vehicles and buildings that reflect the World War II era, as well as other things in between. Infinity Ward did a fantastic job of bringing an older world to life. The game sounds great as well, from the sweet M1 Garand sound after you fire the last round, to the sound of the bolt being pulled back, and the rapid fire of the MG42. Music-wise, it's the kind of composition you would expect to hear from a war movie like Saving Private Ryan. You don't hear it much, but when you do, it enhances the moment completely, like when the reinforcements finally arrive in certain levels, or when you've completed the last mission of a campaign. United Offensive would come a year after, developed by Grey Matter Interactive, offering more campaign content and multiplayer modes. I find this one to be less enjoyable and not as impactful as the main title, and it's definitely a lot harder, but not exactly in a fair way either. But it does, however, have some cool missions, and does add in even more detail, pushing the engine used, the idTech 3 engine, to its limit. If you do, however, get a copy of the first Call of Duty, I would still recommend picking up the expansion too, and play them together. The game's multiplayer is still supported by a small but dedicated community that comprises mostly of old school Call of Duty veterans that know the game inside and out. Nowadays it's pretty difficult to find a full server, however, and where I'm from, my connection would be pretty bad since the most populated servers have a higher ping, so unfortunately I couldn't get into the multiplayer and verse other people. But upon looking into it, it's pretty much like the other Call of Duties with the same game modes and map design, but you also have the addition of vehicles and a rank system that gives you certain benefits. You have the weapons based on what side you picked, and you have no kill streaks or perks to play with. This is Call of Duty's multiplayer in its purest form, and was made at a time where multiplayer was simple but fun, where the experience was enhanced by the player interactions and the easy to pick up style gameplay. It's a shame I never got to experience it in its heyday, but I do owe gratitude to this game for bringing to life the other entries that brought me some of my most memorable multiplayer experiences of all time. Call of Duty 1 is a really solid World War II shooter, with an authentic presentation of a historical setting that's balanced out with arcadey but fun gameplay. Looking at what the series has become today, it's amazing to see now where it all came from. And while I do have my reservations with the recent entries and exhibit nervous excitement for the Modern Warfare 2 reboot, I still am a fan of the Call of Duty franchise, and the classics are always being played and enjoyed by long-time fans like me. I'm glad I gave the first title a chance though, even with its dated gameplay and graphics. But as long as you don't mind either of those things and you're already used to old school shooters, there's definitely a good time to be had here. And it's a great game too if you just want to satisfy your curiosity on how the series got started. Yes, it has its pitfalls, like every game does. It does have its annoyances, like the MG42 or 34 turrets in the windows, and also not understanding why I can't pick up Kar 98K ammo even though I have the scoped version of the weapon that to my knowledge uses the same caliber. But at least I don't have to worry about the Commando or one-man army perk being here. If you're looking for more World War II shooters, start with this one if you haven't yet. Thank you for watching.